heart and treasure. Stewardship of finances. Oh my goodness, is he really going to talk about that? There once was a rich miser. Now you know where I'm going with the sermon today. There once was a rich miser, and he loved money more than anything else. And so he said to his wife one day, I love money so much I want to take it with me when I go. So I want you to put all my money into the casket with me when I die, because I want to take it with me to the afterlife. And she was like, no, you're crazy. This is not going to work. You can't do that. And over the months and years, he kept working on it. Finally, he's on his deathbed, and he's pleading with her. He's just demanding it as a deathbed wish. And so finally, she agrees. She says, okay, I promise I'll do this. And then he dies. So they're at the funeral. All their friends know about this. The casket's there. They finish the funeral service. And then suddenly she says, stop. And she reaches down and takes a box, and she goes over and she opens the casket and puts a box into the casket and closes it. And then they lower it down into the ground. And she goes back to her seat, and her friend turns to her and says, what? You did not. You did not put money in there with that greedy man. Please tell me no. She said, I am a good wife. I made a promise, and I kept that promise to put all his money in there. As a bank card, he can tap. There's a daily limit. We know this is true. You can't take it with you, right? You can't. Maybe some of you are like, it's mostly debt, so I don't want to take it with me. Actually, I would leave that here. The truth is that money can make us weird, right? Even people coming, they're all like, oh, we knew you were going to talk about finances. Oh, we all felt weird. It gets us weird, right? Especially when we talk about it in church. We all have feelings about it. But the truth is, it's hard to be a good steward of your money if you don't have a kingdom view of it. So we need to talk about it. We're in this series we're calling House of Stewards. It's about how God is the king and we're the stewards. We've been given things, and we're answering these questions over the last few weeks. We're answering this question, what has God entrusted to you? And what are you doing with it? So we've had other things today. It's money. Today we say money. God has entrusted to you money, and you need to know what to do with it. We're in Luke 12. That will be my passage this morning, where Jesus responds to this. It's like an inheritance conflict, and he responds to it with a parable and a challenge. And it's all about money, greed, anxiety, and our hearts. So if you have trouble with any of those things, this will be a good sermon for you. Good news. This is the passage, Luke chapter 12. You can follow along on the screen. I'm reading from the NIV. Luke 12, 13 to 34. So Jesus is talking to a crowd. Thousands of people have gathered. And then as he's talking, someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge and an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not set your hearts on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it, for the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will not fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This is God's word. My big idea this morning is that good stewards happily invest money in kingdom generosity. Good stewards happily invest money in kingdom generosity. Now, Jesus gives some warnings, and the first warning he gives is about greed. The Habitat for Humanity guy, his name is Millard Fuller. I don't know if you know Habitat for Humanity as a ministry, but he was running this workshop at the Pittsburgh Theological Seminary with 200 pastors. And as he's doing the workshop, they keep complaining that greed and selfishness were the reasons the church didn't have enough money to do its mission. They kept saying this. And so finally, Millard asks, is it possible for a person to build a house so large that it's sinful in the eyes of God? Raise your hand if you think that's true. And all 200 pastors put up their hand. Yes, you can build a house that's too big. And then Millard says, okay, can you tell me exactly what size? What's the precise square footage a house becomes too sinful to occupy? And there's just silence. He said, you could hear a pin drop. And then a voice from the back shouted, when it's bigger than mine. I think this is the parable question too. When is big too big? Right? You've got a guy, Jesus is telling this story of a wealthy guy with big barns, and life is good, and there's a bumper crop. Like, this is a good problem. Like, there's so much abundant harvest, I don't know what to do with it all. It won't fit in his many barns. So what should he do? What does he do? He decides, I'll build bigger barns. And then God gets mad. And you're like, what's the problem here? What exactly is the problem? The guy's problem is not that he has an abundant harvest. That's not the problem. And actually, the problem is not that he's rich. That's not this guy's problem. And the problem is not that he fills his big barns. That's also not the problem. The problem is that he missed the opportunity to sow into eternity. Jesus warns us to guard against greed. Jesus says, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, or the word is covetousness. I think this is definitely a them problem, not an us problem, right? A greed thing. I mean, greed is such a nasty word, right? If I said to you, are you greedy? Like, no one's going to put up their hand. That's terrible. You're like, greedy. Oh, no, I am not greedy. If I said, okay, consumer, who here's a consumer? We'd all like, yeah, of course, we're consumers. We live in Canada. Like, we have a consumer economy, right? That's how it works. The economy, you need to buy. You need more stuff, newer stuff, bigger stuff. Like, if you don't, the economy doesn't do well. And Jesus says, guard your heart. And if he were here now, I think he might say, and your garage. You probably have too much stuff. That's what I say to myself in the mirror. John, you probably have too much stuff. I'll say it to you too. Our garage is bright brimming. Our crawl space is jammed. And then we rent extra space to store more stuff. Or Jesus counsels us, life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. That's kind of weird to me. Jesus says this to them. I picture them, first century Israel. I think Jesus is saying this to them. Like, do they have cell phones? Do they have cars or ATVs or boats or an air fryer? I like my air fryer. Like I just picture Jesus like, you have a lot of cloaks there. How many cloaks? 2 cloaks? You should give one away. I'm like, if this was a problem then, it's definitely a problem now. Leo Tolstoy writes a story about this successful peasant farmer, very wealthy, but he's never satisfied. And he comes across this deal. For 1,000 rubles, he can have all the land he can walk around in one day. Now, the trick is, or the catch, is you have to be back where you started by sundown. So this guy is super pumped. He's, gets up early in the morning, pays his 1,000 rubles, and he starts going. He is beetling along. I mean, he's moving because he wants a lot. He's going to get it all. And it gets to noon, and he's like, I can do this. And so he keeps going. It's like into the afternoon, and suddenly he realizes that his greed has brought him very far from where he started, and he has to make it back. And so he starts to run back. And he's running and running. And it's super running. He sprints all. He's like giving it all. It's like a marathon to get it all the way back. And he gets back, gasping for breath, heart pounding. He staggers over the line just as the sun goes down. He made it. And then he collapses, blood streaming from his mouth, and he dies. Leo Tolstoy wrote this story, not me, okay? And then his servants dig a grave. It's 6 feet by 3 feet, and they put him in. The title of this story is, How Much Land Does a Man Need? 6 feet by 3 feet, or less if you're cremated. You guys, greed destroys. It does. It subtly steals our joy, and it steals our purpose. There is a cost to your many possessions, a cost to your soul now and later. The truth is, you and I will never have enough. We're never going to have enough. We'll never have enough possessions to feel safe or satisfied. God calls this man a fool to trust, to feel confident in unstable temporal things, a fool to spend his life for possessions, a fool to think there won't be an accounting. Like this parable is a warning. Not every parable is explained. Jesus tells lots of them that aren't explained, but this one is. In verse 21, Jesus says, this is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. Like it's a stark warning. It's a steward's warning. A reckoning is coming. Your life will be accounted. The abundance was a test, and your greed could derail you. And the big question, I'm wondering, how do we get rich toward God? We'll pause the question for Jesus' second warning. The second warning is worry or anxiety. There's a Jewish joke. I don't know why it's a Jewish joke, but that's what it is. Feldman's wife wakes up in the middle of the night and she wakes up to the sound of her husband pacing in the room in the dark. And she says, Feldman, what's wrong with you? Come back to bed. That's what Jewish people talk. And he replies, Dora, I can't sleep. Tomorrow I'm supposed to pay Levine $15,000. I borrowed from him and I don't have it. I'm worried sick. She said, you owe Levine money and you're worried? He said, yeah, I can't sleep. She said, silly man, come back to bed and let Levine worry. You owe him money. It's easy to tell someone not to worry, right? It's very hard to just not worry anymore. I feel like that. Charlie Brown says, I've developed a new philosophy. I only dread one day at a time. Some of you need that, I guess. We're good at worrying. This is a very common human thing. We worry, we're anxious, we deal with this, we hide it. Sometimes we justify it or we camouflage it. Sometimes we medicate it. This is a very common human struggle, anxiety and worry. And Jesus makes this astounding statement. He says in verse 22, therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life. Like, therefore, and so do not be anxious. Don't worry. I think, yeah, sure. Jesus, are you kidding me? You're serious right now? And then verse 25, he says, who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, adding hours to your life, why do you worry about the rest? He just told a story about a guy with very big plans. Just the one weak link in the chain is that he can't sustain his own life. Even his breath is a gift from God. Worry won't make you a better steward. It actually just confuses your priorities. And if greed could derail you, so could worry. It's not going to add more to your life. It can't save you. It can't prolong your life or give you more years or minutes. It just steals them. And the funny thing about the two things Jesus mentions, so what we wear and what we eat, those are the two things Jesus mentions. I think those are really basic needs. Like, I need to eat. That's like a very basic thing. And I need not to be naked, mostly for your sakes. And I would add to that, I need a dry place to sleep. Those are kind of three really basic, important ones. And so we worry. We worry about money. We worry about our future. We worry about retirement. We worry about our mortgage. We worry about the economy. We worry about rising costs. And Jesus says, stop living in the fear you won't have enough and trust me. And I say, how? How? Jesus answers, if you know God, you can trust him. Verse 30 in the Message, I love it in the Message. People who don't know God and the way he works fuss over these things, but you know both God and how he works. If you know God, you can trust him because you would know three things Jesus mentions. Number one, that he's the God of how much more. Jesus uses these two pictures, birds and flowers, and then this kind of sentence structure. It's a very common language pattern. How much more? Jesus does it. He talks about a bad judge, and then he says, how much more just would God be? Or parents, like when your kid comes and asks you for food, you don't give them a scorpion or a snake or something. How much better is God than you? And here is the same. If God can take care of these small temporary creations, how much more would God take care of you? His masterpiece in his image. 50 million birds. I looked it up. At least AI says that. 50 million birds. And none of them are building barns. If they have a barn, it's because you made it for them. Right? How much more does God love you than birds and flowers? Secondly, you would know, if you know God, he's the Father who knows. This is a profound thing, that God knows you. He knows what you're going through. He is with you. He didn't miss it. He's not sleeping. He knows. He knows what you need. And thirdly, he's the Father who gives happily. Jesus says it's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And God doesn't live in scarcity. He's not worried about, will we have enough? All these people want something from me. Like, he's not living like that. He's not worried about enough. And he gives happily. It's this beautiful thing about our God. We don't come and beg and cajole and give enough sacrifices and be good enough so that he'll do something back for you. This isn't our God. It is his good pleasure as a good Father to give you what you need. Philippians 4:6 says, the Lord is at hand or near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. That's a very different way. Where Jesus says, instead seek his kingdom, and these things will be added to you. Almost like God says, you focus on my stuff and let me worry about your stuff. So we have these kind of warnings and these things that could derail us, but what's the task that we should be about? I'm calling it investing. Investing is the task of the steward. Many years ago, several poor pastors that we knew got a letter in their mailbox, and And the letter was from this mysterious group called the Thousand Hills Investment Group. And they had letterhead, and it was like a whole letter. And the letter was very simple. It said, "Thanks for your faithful investing. Your kingdom dividends have issued you early returns." And then in this letter was a cashier's check for several $1,000s. And they were like, "What is this?" And they looked it up. There is no Thousand Hills Investment Group. What is this strange thing, mysterious group? How do I know this story? The reason I know is because we did it. I made it up. I made it up just to make a funny thing for them. Thousand Hills Investment Group. Do you know why we would even do that? Why would we give away money like that? We'd received a generous gift and we gave. Why would we do that? Why would we do it like that? The reason is because we believe in kingdom investing. We believe in kingdom investing. Jesus talks about our hearts and treasure. He tells a story in a different place about a guy who finds buried treasure in a field, and then he sells everything he has to buy the field to have the treasure. Everything he has becomes tied up in this thing that's worth more than everything else. Whereas Jesus says in verse 34, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." It's this challenging statement. Like, the more you invest in your retirement, the more your heart is in your pension plan. You're following it carefully. Or the more you invest in your business, the more your heart is in your company. You've put a lot into it. The more you invest in your house or your toys or your vehicles, your heart will be there also. So the question follows for all of us: where is your treasure? Where is your heart? Do you long for heaven? To see his face? To hear the reward for faithfulness? Jesus tells us that the safest and wisest investment we can make is a kingdom one, what I call Thousand Hills Investment Group. You can get in on it. It doesn't make sense when I look at my budget. I think if an accountant came and looked at my budget, he'd be like, "What is this category? Why are you don't have enough money to do this category. What is this category? Like, why would I give away more than 10% of my income? I have a family to feed. They're hungry people. I have bills to pay. I have a future to consider. Why would I do this?" Jesus says, "Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys." So I would answer that accountant who asked me, I would say, if the economy tanks, or if the stock market crashes, or the real estate bubble bursts, or someone breaks into my home, or my bank account, or my stuff catches fire, or my Porsche depreciates, or is it a Kia Rio? No, if my Kia Rio depreciates, I will not fear. I will not be shaken, because my investment is with Thousand Hills Investment Group. It's on long-term deposit. It's safe. And I will cash it in when I stand before him in glory, where my heart has always been. So let's get practical. Maybe you're wondering, okay, what are you getting at here? I'll tell you. I'm convinced all Thousand Hills investors see all generosity as investment. Maybe you're wondering, well, how much are you talking about here? And I'll answer with Jesus' words in Luke chapter 6. He says, "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." So that's a bit of a challenge. Jesus tells us that God uses the same measuring cup you do. So I have a picture of a little tablespoon. That's the stingy measure. If you use stingy measures, you'll get stingy blessings. If you use generous measures, the picture is overflowing in your lap. I call it fire hose blessings. That's the picture. So there isn't a number. There's not a number. Those with more should give more. Those with less should give less. Although sometimes it's the opposite, and there's stories about the widow who gives everything. So I would encourage you to listen to Jesus prompting your heart and then obey that prompt. Maybe you wonder, well, how do I make an investment? Where exactly are you talking about? And I'll give you some ways that you could invest in Thousand Hills Investment Group. The first one is to cultivate a generous heart. This is found in Deuteronomy 15 and 2 Corinthians 9:11. Learn to give. Learn to give. And when anxiety creeps in on you, I don't have enough, give. When greed, I need more, give. We work against those things in an opposite spirit by cultivating a generous heart. Secondly, you could help the poor and the orphan and the widow. Deuteronomy 24:21 and James 1:27. These groups of people are on God's heart, and if you read the Bible, you'll know that. They're talked about a lot as being important to God. Where Jesus says in our passage, sell your possessions and give to the poor. I picture maybe we need to have a garage sale and we all bring some stuff to sell and then give the money to the poor. Just to do what Jesus says. A third way you could invest is to keep some giving a secret. That's Matthew 6, verse 3. That stock is worth more when you give in secret and no one knows you're giving. My stock went down today because I told you a story about our secret giving, so I hope you put it to good use. You can use that Thousand Hills Investment Group if you want. Fourthly, when prompted, give sacrificially. That's Luke 21:3 and 2 Corinthians 8, verse 3. This stock is also worth more when you give so that it cuts you and you feel it and you have to go without because you gave sacrificially. Now, I'll tell you that if you're rich, if you're wealthy, if you have a lot, this is harder. It's harder because in order to give so that you feel it, that would have to be a lot more the more you have. If you have hardly anything, you could do that a lot. Give sacrificially. And fifth, give a tithe to your local church. The tithe is talked about in Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, 2 Chronicles, Nehemiah, Malachi. This principle of giving first from what we get and giving our best to God is all through Scripture. All the way through. And the word tithe, people, maybe you've heard that word tithe. The word tithe means 10%. And that's where people get that number from, 10%, if you've heard that. Oh, people were supposed to give 10%. Oh, that's the tithe. Okay. That's the word. And some of you will say, that's how you got started. You gave 10%. Others of you will say, well, the New Testament doesn't say that. It doesn't talk about that. It's as a different thing. And I will say, I agree totally. In the New Testament, the standard is everything. People bring everything and give it. So that's a higher challenge. I hope to grow to that point. I believe whatever the number is that you feel called to give, if this is your church home, this is your family, this is your community, then you should be giving financially to the vision and mission and ministry of this house. You know how we come up with what we're doing, what we spend money on? Together we agree. Hey, let's do this. Let's give to this community project. Let's invest in these ways. And then that's called our budget. And then together we give all year toward that budget, toward what we agree to give together so that we can make a difference in our community, in our city for Jesus. Faithful stewards are those who view their financial resources as kingdom capital, meant to be invested through generosity for eternal dividends. It's a mouthful. In conclusion, you going for lunch, you meet some people, they say, hey, you're at church today? Well, what did your pastor talk about? You say, money. They would go, ooh, money, your pastor talked about money. What did he say? I hope you'll be able to say, good stewards happily invest money in kingdom generosity. That's what he said. He said greed could derail you, but they weren't his words, they were the words of Jesus. We all battling this. It's real, it's powerful, and maybe it's time to declutter your life for spiritual reasons. Anxiety could derail you. Worry, the fear you won't have enough, the focus on all sorts of important things in your life could take your focus off the kingdom. What God wants to do, our learning to trust him. And what's our job? The steward's job, I think, is to funnel money into the kingdom investment plan so our hearts will be there. And we do this by cultivating a life of generosity. We use big measures. The kingdom is about to go public, and you can invest your money now in a portfolio that will never be stolen or diminished or destroyed, and the return is unbelievable. Would you pray with me? Jesus, we know that you talked about all sorts of things that are difficult for us, and money's one of them. I think that's just difficult for us. It feels personal or private. It feels, it's important. And so, Jesus, I pray that this morning you would help us to see this in view of your kingdom, in view of your desire for us to be free and to follow you and to have an impact on the world where we live. And so, Lord, would you help us? Would you soften our hearts where we need it? Would you challenge us where we need it? Convict us and help us to become a people who resemble you, who you are and what you stand for. Thank you that you can do this work in us. You promise that you will, and you'll finish what you start. We love you. Amen.